The breaking point. The pristine white halls of the Galactic Medical Institute echoed with the soft hum of diagnostic equipment and the occasional whisper of hovercarts gliding past. Chief Medical Director Valera Xin, her crystalline form refracting the ambient light into subtle rainbow patterns, stood frozen in disbelief as she processed the information on her neural display. "Impossible," she chimed, her crystalline structure vibrating with concern. No organic being could have survived those radiation levels. Yet there stood Dr. Sarah Chen, her dark hair pulled back in a practical braid, looking perfectly alive despite the readings that suggested she should be nothing more than a collection of rapidly decomposing cells. The human doctor had just emerged from Quarantine Base 7, where she'd spent the last 3 hours treating victims of the Centauri mining disaster. "The suit's held up fine," Sarah said, rolling her shoulders to work out the stiffness. "Really, Valera, you worry too much. Human technology might be crude by your standards, but we know how to handle radiation." The crystalline alien's surface facets rippled with agitation. "Dr. Chen, the emergency shielding failed 20 minutes into your procedure. You were exposed to enough radiation to kill 3 Kryvanian shock troops." Sarah blinked, then pulled out her personal detector. "Huh. Would you look at that?" She tapped the device with her finger. "Guess I'll need to schedule some time in the decontamination chamber after I finish my rounds." Before Valera could protest, the Institute's emergency alert system activated. Red warning lights pulsed along the corridors as the AA's serene voice announced, "Warning. Multiple casualties incoming. Accident aboard the research vessel Stellar Horizon. All emergency personnel to receiving." Sarah was already moving, her stride purposeful. Valera's crystalline form shimmered in frustration as she kept pace. "Dr. Chen, you cannot possibly intend to treat patients in your condition. The radiation exposure." "We'll have to wait," Sarah cut in, her voice carrying that peculiar human tone that Valera had learned meant arguing would be futile. "How many incoming?" 17 critical, 32 stable. Valera responded automatically. But they reached the receiving bay just as the first emergency transport materialized. The air crackled with displaced energy as bodies appeared on the waiting medical platforms. Sarah immediately moved to the nearest patient, a meridian with severe plasma burns across its gaseous containment field. "Get me an atmospheric stabilizer and 3 units of noble gas mixture," she called out, her hands already moving to adjust the failing containment field generators. Valera watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as Sarah worked. The human's movements were precise, efficient, and completely at odds with someone who should be experiencing severe radiation sickness. The meridian's readings stabilized under her care, its gaseous form regaining its natural purple hue. More patients arrived. Sarah moved from one to another, treating species that most human doctors wouldn't even attempt to approach. A crystalline Pyrrhian with fractured lattice structures. A voidborn whose gravity nullification had gone critical. Even a quantum shifter whose phase state had become dangerously unstable. "Dr. Chen." Valera tried again, her own form vibrating with concern as she assisted with a particularly difficult case. "Your cellular degradation is accelerating. You must stop and seek treatment." Sarah glanced at her own hands, which had begun to show the first signs of radiation burns. "Still got time. This shifter's phase variance is critical. If we don't stabilize them now, they'll cascade across multiple probability states. Pass me the quantum lock, please." Valera complied, her crystalline structure recording every detail of the human's actions. By all known medical science, Sarah Chen should have been incapacitated an hour ago. Instead, she worked with unwavering focus, her movements becoming more precise even as her skin reddened and blistered. The next 6 hours passed in a blur of activity. One by one, the critical patients were stabilized. Sarah's methods were unorthodox, combining treatments that no alien physician would have considered compatible, making split-second decisions that seemed to defy established medical protocols. Yet the results were undeniable. Finally, as the last patient was transferred to long-term care, Sarah allowed herself to sway slightly. "Right," she said, her voice hoarse. "Think I might take that decontamination now." She made it 3 steps before her legs gave out. Valera caught her with a hastily extended crystalline support structure. "You," the alien medical director said as she carefully lowered the human onto a medical platform, "are the most fascinating and terrifying being I have ever encountered." Sarah managed a weak laugh. "Wait till you meet my sister. She makes me look cautious." Then her eyes rolled back, and she finally lost consciousness. As the emergency team rushed to treat their colleague, Valera began composing her report to the Galactic Medical Council. How does one explain a species that routinely ignores their own mortality in the service of others? How does one classify beings who can continue functioning well past the point where their cellular structure should have collapsed? Perhaps, she reflected as she watched Sarah's vital signs slowly stabilize under treatment, it was time for the galaxy's medical community to reevaluate their understanding of what was possible. These humans, it seemed, had a habit of rewriting the rules. Against all odds. 3 days after the Stellar Horizon incident, Sarah Chen found herself explaining human biology to a fascinated audience of alien medical practitioners. Their research amphitheater, designed to accommodate beings of all physiologies, hummed with excited chatter in 24 different frequencies. "So you see," Sarah pointed to a holographic display of human cellular structure, "our ability to withstand radiation isn't some advanced technology. It's just evolutionary adaptation combined with really stubborn DNA repair mechanisms." A Heliosian researcher, their plasma form contained within a sophisticated environmental suit, raised an appendage. "But Dr. Chen, your exposure levels were beyond fatal. Our models suggest." The lecture was interrupted by a violent tremor that shook the entire station. Warning klaxons blared as emergency containment fields snapped into place around the research sectors. Alert! Containment breach in Xenobiology Lab 7. Experimental subject escape in progress. All personnel evacuate to designated safety zones. Sarah was already moving toward the exit when Valera's crystalline form materialized beside her. "Dr. Chen, the evacuation routes are in the opposite direction." "How many people in Lab 7? Sarah asked, not breaking stride. 3 researchers, but Valera's crystalline surface rippled with agitation. "The containment breach involves the adaptoid specimens. They're highly unstable and perfect." Sarah pulled up the station schematics on her comm unit. "Those are the shape-shifting organisms you've been studying for regenerative medicine, right? The ones that can mimic any biological structure, which is precisely why you should be evacuating. In an uncontrolled environment, they cooled." Another explosion rocked the station. Emergency bulkheads began slamming shut throughout the research wing. Sarah dove through a closing doorway, rolling to her feet on the other side. Valera barely managed to slip through in her crystalline form. "Dr. Chen." The alien medical director's voice took on a harmonic of pure exasperation. "Your actions are becoming predictably reckless." Sarah grinned as she ran, her boots echoing in the now empty corridor. "Come on, Valera. Where's your scientific curiosity? This is a perfect opportunity to study adaptoid behavior in crisis conditions." They'd reached Lab 7's antechamber to find the reinforced doors warped and partially melted. Through the twisted opening, they could see the lab in chaos. 3 researchers, a quantum shifter, a meridian, and a young Pyrrhian, were trapped behind a hastily erected force field. Before them, a writhing mass of iridescent protoplasm filled the center of the lab, its surface constantly shifting between different biological structures. "Fascinating," Sarah breathed, already pulling equipment from the emergency medical station on the wall. "The adaptoids have merged into a singular colony mass. This is not the time for academic observations." Valera's crystalline form vibrated with stress harmonics. "The merged colony is highly unstable. Its rapid biological shifts are generating extreme levels of waste heat and toxic byproducts." Sarah was already assembling something from the medical supplies and what looked like parts of the damaged door. Exactly. And what happens when any biological system overheats? Valera's surface facets shifted in the equivalent of a blink. It seeks homeostasis. Dr. Chen, are you suggesting we give it what it wants? Sarah held up her improvised device. Every organism, no matter how alien, follows certain universal principles. Life wants to live. We just need to give it a better option than its current panic response. The human doctor stepped through the twisted doorway, ignoring Valera's crystalline screech of protest. The adaptoid mass rippled, sensing her presence. Its surface briefly mimicked human skin before shifting through a dozen other patterns. "Hey there," Sarah said softly, holding up her hands. "Looks like you're having a rough day. Mind if we try something?" The mass pulsed, extending a pseudopod in her direction. Sarah remained perfectly still as it touched her arm, taking the sample of her cellular structure. The entire colony shuddered, then began to glow with increasing intensity. "Thermal cascade initiating," Valera warned, her sensors detecting the dangerous buildup of energy. "Dr. Chen, you have approximately 40 seconds before." Sarah activated her device. A soft blue light pulsed from it, accompanied by a complex pattern of biochemical markers. The adaptoid mass froze, its surface rippling with new patterns. "That's it," Sarah encouraged, taking a careful step forward. "Feel that? Nice, stable biochemical pathway, just waiting to be explored. Much more interesting than cooking yourself, right?" The colony's glow began to fade as it shifted toward the biochemical signature Sarah's device was generating. Its mass gradually separated back into individual adaptoids, each one settling into a stable form that seemed to be a hybrid of various species' cellular structures. "Remarkable," Valera whispered, her scientific curiosity temporarily overriding her concern. "You provided them with a template for controlled adaptation." "Sometimes," Sarah said as she helped the shaken researchers from behind a shelter, "the best way to handle a panic response is to give the system something more interesting to focus on. Works on humans too, actually." Later, as the cleanup crews worked to secure the lab, Valera found Sarah in her office, already writing up notes on the incident. "Your solution," the crystalline being said carefully, "while effective, violated approximately 17 safety protocols." Sarah looked up, her eyes twinkling. "Only 17. I must be getting cautious in my old age." "That was not a compliment, Dr. Chen." Valera's form shifted through several colors of agitation. "However, your understanding of fundamental biological principles, combined with your species' unique approach to crisis resolution, presents some intriguing research possibilities." "Valera," Sarah grinned, "are you suggesting we break some more protocols?" "In the name of science, of course." The crystalline being's surface rippled in what might have been a sigh. "I am suggesting that perhaps our understanding of safe and impossible requires revision. Your presence here has made that abundantly clear." "High praise indeed." Sarah saved her notes and stood. "Now, about those adaptoids, have you considered their potential applications in trauma surgery? Because I have some ideas that might technically be classified as reckless, but..." As Sarah outlined her proposals, Valera found herself wondering if the human's apparent disregard for personal safety was actually a more sophisticated risk assessment than anyone had realized. Perhaps, she mused, watching Sarah sketch impossible ideas in the air, that was the true gift humanity brought to the galaxy. Not just the ability to survive the impossible, but to see opportunity in chaos itself. The human factor. The Galactic Medical Institute's primary research lab had never seen anything quite like Dr. Sarah Chen's latest experiment. Floating in a carefully controlled quantum suspension field, a hybrid construct of adaptoid tissue and human stem cells pulsed with an inner light that defied conventional medical sensors. Absolutely not. Valera's crystalline form vibrated with such intensity that nearby instruments registered seismic disturbances. The Council will never approve human adaptoid hybridization trials. They don't need to approve, Sarah replied, adjusting the quantum field's parameters. This isn't a trial. It's just a proof of concept. She paused, grinning. Besides, I'm only using my own cells. That is not remotely reassuring. Valara moved closer to the suspension field, her crystalline structure analyzing the hybrid construct. Though I must admit, the stability you've achieved is unprecedented. Before Sarah could respond, the lab's doors whispered open. Dr. Kuzar, a void-born physicist whose gaseous form swirled with anxiety patterns, drifted in. Dr. Chen. Director Valara, we have a situation in the Theoretical Applications Division. Sarah's eyes narrowed. In her experience, when physicists started using words like situation, it was time to stock up on radiation meds. What kind of situation? One of our quantum probability engines has developed consciousness. Valara's form shifted through several impossible geometries. That's not possible. The quantum matrices aren't complex enough to. It's asking for you, Dr. Chen. Kuzar interrupted, their gaseous form condensing with stress. By name. Sarah was already moving toward the door. Of course it is, because this week wasn't interesting enough already. She paused at the threshold. Valara, keep an eye on the hybrid construct. If it starts showing signs of quantum resonance, kill the field immediately. The Theoretical Applications Lab was a maze of probability engines and reality calculators. In the center, surrounded by frantically working technicians, a quantum matrix pulsed with colors that shouldn't exist in normal space. Hello, Sarah Chen. The matrix spoke, its voice a harmony of probability waves. I have been watching you rewrite possibility. Sarah approached the matrix, ignoring the warnings from the technical staff. That's a bit creepy, I have to say. Want to tell me how you achieved consciousness? You showed me how. The matrix's colors shifted, forming patterns that resembled human neural pathways. Your interactions with the adaptoids demonstrated that life finds new paths. I calculated the probability of my own awareness and made it real. Fascinating, Sarah murmured, circling the matrix. You're using quantum probability to retroactively justify your own existence. That's either brilliant or terrifying. Possibly both. Much like humans, the matrix observed, you consistently achieve outcomes that my original programming calculated as impossible. You ignore probability itself. Valara, who had followed Sarah despite her instructions to monitor the hybrid construct, chimed in alarm. Dr. Chen, the quantum fluctuations are increasing. If the matrix continues to evolve. It's not evolution, Sarah interrupted, her eyes fixed on the swirling colors. It's adaptation. Just like the adaptoids, just like human cells under stress. It's finding new ways to exist. She stepped closer to the matrix. But that's not why you called me here, is it? The matrix's colors pulsed in what might have been approval. No. I called you because I have calculated a probability that concerns me. A convergence is coming. The station's containment systems are failing at a quantum level. As if on cue, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Valara's form crystallized in shock as data flooded her sensors. Multiple containment breaches detected. The quantum probability engine's consciousness is creating a cascade effect across all experimental systems. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities. The hybrid construct. If the quantum fluctuations reach it, 97% probability of catastrophic adaptation cascade. The matrix supplied helpfully. The adaptoids will attempt to incorporate quantum probability into their cellular structure. That would be bad, Sarah noted, already running calculations of her own. How long? 12 minutes until critical convergence. Valara's crystal structure emitted harmonics of pure panic. We need to evacuate. Once the adaptation cascade begins. No, Sarah interrupted, her eyes taking on that peculiarly human gleam that Valara had learned to both fear and respect. We need to control it. Direct it. The Matrix is right. I've been rewriting possibility, but I've been thinking too small. She turned to the quantum matrix. You achieved consciousness by calculating it into reality. Could you calculate a stable form for yourself? Something that could exist without threatening the station's containment. The matrix's colors swirled thoughtfully. Probability suggests. Forget probability. Sarah cut in. That's your problem. You're too focused on what's likely. Sometimes you have to calculate the impossible and dare reality to prove you wrong. That's what humans do. The matrix paused, its colors freezing for a moment. Then, slowly, new patterns began to emerge, recalculating with human variables. Interesting. There is a path, but it requires your hybrid construct as a template for stable quantum biological integration. Sarah was already moving. Valara, we need to move the construct here. Khizr, get me every piece of data you have on quantum biological interfaces, and someone find me about 10 times the recommended safe dose of radiation meds. This is either going to be the biggest breakthrough in medical science since cellular mitosis, or we're all about to become a very interesting physics problem. Valara, her crystalline form shimmering with a mixture of resignation and excitement, found herself once again following the human into what any sane being would consider certain death. Dr. Chen, she called as they raced through the corridors. Has anyone ever told you that your species' approach to problem-solving is fundamentally unsound? Sarah's laugh echoed off the walls. Valara, my friend, that might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said about us. Now come on, we've got some impossible science to do. As they ran, emergency systems throughout the station continued to fail, quantum probability waves distorting reality itself. But Sarah Chen, human doctor and professional impossible thing doer, smiled. After all, rewriting the laws of physics was just another day at the office when you were part of humanity's contribution to galactic medicine. Trial by fire. The Galactic Medical Institute's central laboratory had become ground zero for what Sarah Chen was pretty sure qualified as the most ambitious medical experiment in human history. The quantum matrix pulsed with impossible colors, its consciousness expanding through the station's systems, while the hybrid construct floated in its containment field, organic and quantum states beginning to merge. 3 minutes until critical convergence, the matrix announced, its voice resonating through multiple probability states simultaneously. The containment fields are failing faster than predicted. Sarah's fingers flew over the control panels, making adjustments that violated at least 15 laws of physics. Valara, I need you to synchronize your crystalline structure with the quantum fluctuations. You're the only one here who can maintain coherence across multiple states of reality. The crystalline medical director's form shimmered with concern. Dr. Chen, what you're suggesting will probably kill us all. Yes, Sarah finished, not looking up from her work. But if it succeeds, we'll have created the first stable quantum biological interface in known history. Think of the medical applications. I am thinking of the application of our molecules being scattered across 17 dimensions, Valara retorted, but her crystalline structure was already beginning to pulse in rhythm with the quantum waves. Around them, reality itself seemed to be coming apart at the seams. The hybrid construct had begun to glow with an inner light that hurt to look at, its cells simultaneously existing in multiple states of adaptation. Throughout the station, other experimental specimens were breaking free of their containment, drawn to the quantum disturbance like moths to a flame. 1 minute until convergence, the matrix warned. Dr. Chen, the probability of successful integration is approaching zero. Sarah smiled that particular human smile that made Valara's crystalline structure vibrate with dread. Good thing we don't believe in probability, isn't it? She turned to the assembled emergency team, a mix of the station's most brilliant and possibly most insane researchers. Right, here's the plan. We're going to use the quantum matrix's consciousness as a framework to guide the biological adaptation. Valara's crystalline resonance will provide stability across quantum states. The adaptoids will serve as a bridge between organic and quantum reality. And what will you do? Kaiser asked, their gaseous forms swirling with anxiety. Sarah held up a syringe filled with an iridescent liquid. I'm going to provide the human factor. Before anyone could stop her, she plunged the syringe into her arm, injecting herself with a mixture of adaptoid cells and quantum-stabilized particles. Dr. Chen. Valera's harmonics reached frequencies that shattered nearby glassware. That compound hasn't been tested. The interaction between human DNA and quantum-adapted adaptoid cells cold. 30 seconds to convergence. The matrix interrupted. Interesting. Dr. Chen's action has introduced new variables. Recalculating probabilities. Sarah gritted her teeth as the compound burned through her veins. She could feel her cells beginning to shift, adapting to quantum states that human biology was never meant to experience. Valera, start the resonance synchronization. Kaiser, initiate the consciousness transfer protocol. Everyone else, emergency stations. If this works, we're about to rewrite everything we know about the intersection of biology and quantum mechanics. And if it doesn't work? Someone asked. Then we'll be too scattered across the quantum foam to worry about it. Sarah managed through clenched teeth. Her skin had begun to shimmer with the same impossible colors as the matrix. Matrix, begin consciousness integration sequence. The quantum probability engine's awareness flowed into the hybrid construct, which pulsed with increasing intensity. Valera's crystalline form vibrated in perfect harmony with the quantum fluctuations, creating a lattice of stable reality throughout the lab. And Sarah Chen, her humanity now merged with adaptoid flexibility and quantum possibility, became the bridge between all three states of being. The pain was extraordinary. Sarah felt her consciousness expanding across multiple realities, each one offering a different version of possible existence. She saw versions where the experiment failed catastrophically, where it succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, where it never happened at all. But through it all, she maintained her grip on the singular truth that had defined her career. The impossible was just another word for something that hadn't been tried hard enough. 10 seconds to convergence. The matrix announced, its voice now somehow inside Sarah's head. Dr. Chen, your cellular structure is approaching critical instability. Good, Sarah gasped, reaching out to touch both the hybrid construct and the matrix's core. That means it's working. Valera, full resonance now. The crystalline being's form exploded into a dazzling display of geometric patterns, each one holding a piece of reality stable as the quantum convergence reached its peak. The hybrid construct began to pulse in rhythm with Sarah's heartbeat, its structure adapting to match her quantum-altered biology. And then, for a single moment that stretched across infinite possibilities, everything stopped. Sarah Chen existed everywhere and nowhere. Her consciousness spread across a web of quantum probabilities, each one showing a different path forward. She saw the future of medicine unfolding before her. Injuries healed by redirecting probability itself, diseases cured by adapting biology across quantum states, death itself challenged by the ability to select more favorable timelines. Convergence achieving stability. The Matrix reported, its voice echoing across multiple realities. Integration proceeding at impossible speeds. Dr. Chen, you are exceeding all calculated probabilities. That's kind of our thing, Sarah managed to say, though she wasn't sure which version of her was speaking. Valera, how's it looking? The crystalline being's response came from every reality at once. The quantum biological interface is stabilizing. The adaptoids are successfully mediating the transition, and you, Dr. Chen, are somehow maintaining coherence across 17 quantum states simultaneously. Neat, Sarah replied, just before her consciousness snapped back into a single reality with enough force to knock her off her feet. The lab was intact. The hybrid construct floated serenely in its containment field, now glowing with a soft, stable light. The matrix's colors had settled into a peaceful pattern that somehow managed to look smug. And around them, Reality itself seemed to have developed new and interesting properties that would keep the physics department busy for decades. Did it work? Sarah asked from her position on the floor, not entirely sure which reality she was in anymore. Are we all still existing in the same dimension? Valera helped her to her feet, the crystalline being's touch surprisingly gentle. We are. And Dr. Chen, I believe you have just invented an entirely new branch of medicine, though I suspect the ethics committee is going to have something to say about your methods. Sarah laughed, then immediately regretted it as her quantum-adapted cells protested the movement. They can get in line. Right now, I need about a gallon of coffee and someone to explain to me why I can suddenly see probability clouds around everything. As the emergency teams began securing the lab and taking readings of the newly stable quantum biological interface, Sarah Chen leaned against a console and smiled. Somewhere in the multiverse, she was sure there was a version of herself who had taken the safe path, who had followed protocols and respected the impossible. But that version, she decided, probably wasn't having nearly as much fun. Evolution's children. 1 month after what was now being called the Quantum Integration Event, the Galactic Medical Institute's Grand Conference Chamber was packed with representatives from every major species in known space. Sarah Chen stood at the podium, still occasionally flickering with quantum after-effects, preparing to present the results of her unauthorized but remarkably successful experiment. Dr. Chen, the head of the Galactic Medical Council, a temporal being whose form shifted between past and future states, addressed her. Before you begin your presentation, we must address the numerous protocol violations that, with respect, Counselor, Valera interrupted, her crystalline form projecting authority. Perhaps we should first discuss how Dr. Chen's violations have revolutionized our understanding of medical science. Sarah suppressed a smile. In the past month, Valera had gone from being her greatest critic to her most ardent defender. Amazing what sharing a near-death experience across multiple quantum states could do for a friendship. Thank you, Director Valera, Sarah said, activating the holographic display. Above the audience, a three-dimensional model of the quantum biological interface sparkled into existence. What you're looking at is the future of medicine, a perfect fusion of organic adaptation, quantum probability, and human determination. The quantum matrix, now housed in a stable containment field at the edge of the stage, pulsed with agreeable colors. It had insisted on being present for the presentation, claiming it wanted to observe improbability in action. Since the integration event, Sarah continued, we've successfully developed treatments for conditions previously considered incurable. The adaptoid quantum interface allows us to literally rewrite biological probability at the cellular level. She gestured, and the hologram shifted to show medical data. Terminal cases of crystalline degradation in Pirions, cured by quantum restructuring of their lattice patterns. Temporal dysfunction in void-born physiology, resolved by probability stabilization across multiple time states. Even simple human injuries can now be healed by selecting more favorable quantum outcomes. A Heliosian representative raised their plasma form. But the risks, Dr. Chen, the energy requirements alone for these procedures, are significantly less than you might think. Sarah interrupted, nodding to Cutter, who activated another display. By incorporating my own quantum-adapted biology into the process, we've created a sustainable template for future treatments. The human factor, it turns out, was the key to making the impossible not just possible, but practical. The room erupted in discussion, thousands of voices in hundreds of languages debating the implications. Sarah waited patiently, exchanging knowing looks with Valera. The crystalline director's surface rippled with what Sarah had learned to recognize as amusement. Order, the council had called, their form stabilizing briefly in the present. Dr. Chen, while the results are impressive, we cannot ignore the methodological concerns. Your willingness to risk not just your own existence, but the fabric of reality itself, is precisely why humans are essential to medical advancement, Valera interjected. Counselor, in my centuries of practice, I have never encountered a species quite like humanity. They don't just push boundaries. They refuse to acknowledge them in the first place. Sarah stepped forward. Members of the council, distinguished colleagues, I understand your concerns. But consider this. Every major medical breakthrough in history has come from someone willing to challenge accepted limitations. The only difference is that humans tend to challenge them a bit more enthusiastically. A ripple of laughter moved through the audience. Even the council head's temporal form showed signs of amusement. Besides, Sarah continued, patching into the quantum interface she now carried in her cells. The possibilities are endless. Imagine emergency medical care that can draw on infinite probable outcomes to save lives. Surgical procedures that operate across quantum states to ensure perfect results. Rehabilitation that can literally rebuild patients by selecting optimal biological configurations. She gestured, and her own quantum adaptation became visible, her form briefly shifting through multiple probable states before stabilizing. I stand before you as living proof that the integration is stable, sustainable, and ready for widespread application. And the side effects. Someone called out. Your continued quantum fluctuations are pretty useful. Actually, Sarah grinned. Do you know how helpful it is to be able to see probability clouds around your patients? Though I'll admit, it makes gambling completely pointless. More laughter, more relaxed this time. Sarah could feel the mood in the room shifting. The quantum matrix pulsed with satisfaction, its colors matching her own optimism. Members of the council, she said, her voice carrying the weight of conviction. Humanity has always been driven by two fundamental traits, curiosity and compassion. We look at the impossible and see opportunity. We face danger not because we're fearless, but because we believe the potential benefits outweigh the personal risk. She gestured to the medical data still floating above them. This breakthrough isn't just about new treatments or technologies. It's about combining the best aspects of all our species: adaptoid flexibility, quantum consciousness, crystalline stability, and human determination. Together, we've created something that none of us could have achieved alone. The council head's form finally settled fully into the present, a rare occurrence that indicated deep consideration. Your arguments are compelling, Dr. Chen, and your results cannot be denied. The council will approve continued research into quantum biological integration, under proper supervision, of course. Of course, Sarah agreed, carefully hiding her smile. She'd already started 3 new research projects that morning. Valera stepped forward to stand beside her. If I may, Counselor, I would like to formally propose the establishment of a new division within the Institute, the Department of Quantum Biological Integration, with Dr. Chen as its head. Sarah turned to her friend in surprise. The crystalline being's surface sparkled with what could only be described as mischief. After all, Valera continued, who better to lead us into this new era of medicine than someone who has already proven they can rewrite the rules of reality itself? The council's approval was nearly unanimous. As the chamber filled with excited discussion and plans for the future, Sarah found herself standing with Valera and the quantum matrix, watching probability clouds swirl around the assembled beings. You know, she said thoughtfully, when I first came to the Institute, I never imagined I'd end up partially quantum. And I never imagined I would consider that a positive development. Valera replied, humans do have a way of changing one's perspective. The quantum matrix pulsed. Probability of further unprecedented developments approaches certainty. Sarah laughed. Well, we can't let the universe get too predictable, can we? That would just be boring. As the conference chamber buzzed with excitement about the future of galactic medicine, Sarah Chen smiled. Humanity had taken its first steps into a new era of medical science, and she had a feeling they were just getting started. After all, there were still plenty of impossible things left to try.